We'll go ahead and get started. We've got some guests here talking about the Georgia Brain Train. And Emory, you want to come up? And former Commissioner Wayne Shackelford, good to see you. Good to have you here. Everybody should have a handout about the brain train. Let the aide, Rob, hand those things out. That's it, your job. Okay. You need to be up and hand out stuff. That's part of your job description.
I just drove back from Augusta this morning. It would have been a lot nicer if we had a train to get back here. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about basically bringing Georgia back together, making it possible for people in Georgia to get around Georgia conveniently, safely, environmentally soundly, and economically. The Brain Train is the line that runs from Atlanta to Athens on existing CSX right-of-way. It's a project that's been talked about for 20 years. Only in the last year have we started to really get the train on the tracks with the Brain Train group. We are working with people all the way from Atlanta to Athens, working with the universities. In fact, that's why we call ourselves the Brain Train, because we'll link Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Emory, Mercer, the New Gwinnett University, and Athens, all together conveniently and safely. The Georgia Brain Train runs about 68 miles from Atlanta to Athens. It is something that we need to get going on. The estimated cost 3 years ago was $380 million. Based on how this is working in other parts of the country, we would anticipate that we would have a state contribution of 20% of that and a federal match of 80%. We envision that this could be up and running in 2011. We are asking you to allocate $10 million for the initial planning and land acquisition for some of the stations, and ask you to work with the City of Atlanta and receive the piece of land that they are willing to donate to create a multimodal terminal hub in the center of Atlanta, from which 7 different spokes will radiate out to all parts of Georgia. And we're asking you to request the federal matching funds for the Transportation Reauthorization Act that comes up next year. We have great support from many of the folks in the state legislature and the state senate. We're asking you to help us get this on track. Many of you may have seen the Brain Train Bulldogs when you were in Athens for the biennial, the beginning of December. The students of all of these universities are incredibly excited about getting this up and running. Many of them want to get to their college without having to drive. Many of them would like to take courses at different colleges. This is a safe, economical way for them to do that. Trains are faster and more efficient economically and environmentally than adding more lanes on 85 or 316 or 75 or 20. We need to do that, but we need to create other forms of transportation at the same time. There are 28 other cities ahead of us on creating passenger rail lines. We've got cities that we're competing with directly economically that are starting to eat our lunch because you can get around those cities easier than you can get around Atlanta. This is a fast, cheap way to get transportation for tens of thousands of people up and running. Emory University and the Centers for Disease Control on Clifton Road are gridlocked. You can't get in and out on Clifton Road, North Decatur, or Briarcliff. As the CDC and Emory expand, and I might add that's an expansion that's great for Georgia, they need to have the capability to get their people in and out. And this is a fairly quick way to do that. I want to, again, thank you all for hearing us, and I want to invite Commissioner Shackelford up to to basically follow up, and then I assume that you all will have some questions.
Thank you, Emery.
Thank you.
You stay up there
Okay.
with him if you want to. So,
I might add that we have two transportation superstars working on this. This isn't just a transit deal. This is a transportation deal. And Tom Moreland and Wayne Shackelford have been with us since the beginning, and they see the importance of this.
Thank you, Emery. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted today to come and talk with you about a vitally needed transportation component to give more complete and balanced transportation in our state. When the federal transportation bill was passed in 1991, one of the first things that the department undertook was a statewide passenger rail study and the commuter rail study that shows those corridors radiating out from the core center of this city, a city built on transportation. I live in the Atlanta to Athens corridor. My medical research team is at Emory. I know the difficulty of getting into the Clifton corridor. Emory University, with all of its complex, the national headquarters of the Communicable Diseases Center, the Veterans Administration Medical Center, and the related activities provide jobs for 28,000 Georgians daily. They can't get to their jobs. The four interstates that box that complex are miles from the center, and the roads from those interstates, both state and local, are overwhelmed with the volumes that have grown in metropolitan Atlanta and have made us the success that we are. Atlanta hit 1 million people in 1958, 2 years after the passage of the interstate bill. We're 4 million today. We'll be 7 million in 2030. And we must add some additional components to our road system, our MARTA system, the Greta Express buses that are making a difference, and the expansion of all of the above. The rail can be done at a fraction of what it takes to add a lane on an interstate. About 1/10 of what it costs to add a mile on the interstate. The department has done a great job of advancing the project to this time. In 2004, they got the approval of the environmental to do this line. The first phase, from here in downtown Atlanta out to Cedars Road, beyond the airport at Lawrenceville, will take about $311 million in 2005 dollars, and just under $400 million, the additional 70 plus million, will get the road to Athens, the rail to Athens. CSX is very near completing their capacity study, which the department has given strong leadership toward. The time is now to put those seed dollars out there so that this vitally needed, environmentally friendly component can be added to the system. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to read, work, or gloriously sleep instead of struggling down I-85 as you do, Mr. Rogers, and as I did for 10 years?
Commissioner, I guess I can call you Wayne now, but
You can call me whatever you choose, sir.
I know you were a big proponent when you were the commissioner, and Harold was your assistant. I remember that, and y'all spent I don't know how many millions you spent on planning, but at that time we were talking about 12 lines, trying to do 12 lines over a period of time.
This one was in the top two then.
I knew
It's
it
in
was.
the top two today.
Well, it was actually the first one.
Yes,
correct?
it was, sir.
Emory, and you mentioned we needed more planning money. Why do we need more planning money? I know we've got plans, do we not?
Simply to update the construction costs.
Okay.
Since they were done in 2004 and 2005,
Okay.
based on $2005.
Okay. But as far as the environmental impact and all that, we don't need.
No, thanks to the great job the department's done, there's an approved environmental. We got about 2 more years to get started on it, or the department would have to update that environmental.
Okay. And the other, how much more in planning money? $3 million? Is that what I heard you say? Of this $10 million, Emory?
We're thinking a total of $10 million for planning and for initial site acquisition.
And that's for the stations, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And again, this would run on existing CSX
Right.
right-of-way that's already there. There's a touch of Norfolk Southern out around Athens. Athens has already built its station. It's
Right.
ready to go. Those of you that took the tour in December were pretty amazed that they had the foresight to build a station that accommodates University of Georgia, that accommodates buses coming in and out, and these trains that will come in from Atlanta. There's already a station in Lawrenceville. There's a station at Emory on Clifton Road. We've got to fill in some of those gaps, and it'd be great to do that before land prices get any higher.
Okay. We have a question here from Chairman Smith.
On the CSX line, will this line be freight and passenger rail?
Yes, it will, but the $383 million in 2005 dollars allows the completion of parallel trackage so that there's a place for commuter rail without taking away from the freight rail that operates on the line today. And that's part of CSX's capacity analysis that's being done at this time.
If I might add, CSX is already running 2 passenger rail lines. They're running one in Northern Virginia that has been incredibly successful from Washington out to Fredericksburg, and they're running another one in South Florida. They understand how to do this, and they're ready to go. They're not going to lose money on this, but Wayne and I have met with their leadership. They understand what's involved, and they're willing to work with us to make this happen.
So in it, if it is freight for a while, and then it'll eventually be totally passenger line, so that means the train will run periodically all day long, or?
Initially in AM peak and PM peak, 4 trains in each direction, but the capacity and a study planned on the addition of a midday line. But we're not proposing to eliminate their freight capacity. Build enough parallel lines to allow both to function. And Representative Lucas very correctly said it. They did not cooperate with us during the Olympics. It had to do with their concern about terrorism, if you want to know the truth. And they did not cooperate. But since that time, they have found that they're making money on the commuter rail lines they're operating, and they are open to the process and nearly done the completion of the capacity analysis. But Representative Lucas, you're very correct. They did not cooperate during the games.
So when you're talking about making money, that statement, are we saying that this line, when it's fully functional, that it'll make enough to sustain itself without any subsidies?
No, the Department of Transportation study shows slightly over $5 million a year in subsidy.
Which is the case with every other method of transportation in Georgia and every other railroad line in the country. They all receive some kind of subsidy from their state and or their local governments. and we envision and ask for that as well. We're not kidding ourselves that this is going to be totally self-sufficient. What this will do for the economy of Atlanta and Georgia is worth thousands of times more than the minor cost we're going to pay each year to make this work.
I want to comment on one other thing, too. Congestion is destroying our competitiveness in a national market and a world market. The average trip in this region today is over 31 minutes. It's much more than that in that 316 CSX corridor that we're talking about. We're losing our competitiveness because we've grown more people, more trips, and more business than we've grown transportation infrastructure. This is one opportunity to take some cars off of the freeways and other state roads and local roads, preserve that capacity, and do it at a much cheaper rate.
Once we get this up and running, we envision the other spokes coming along as well. This will prove that this concept works. And at some point, you'll have trains going to Augusta, Savannah, Columbus, down past Macon, all the way to Jacksonville, up through Marietta to Chattanooga. This is the first big success that we will see. This is obvious. This is ready to go. People want it. I'm in the real estate business. This is like building a shopping center and having the anchor tenants in place and ready to go. Emory and CDC want this. They want it badly. And they are people who will ride this train. 8,000 of them will ride this train from Barrow, Oconee, Gwinnett, and DeKalb County into that one place. They're ready to go. They're not pickup truck riders. They'll be train riders. And they're anxious to get it going.
I'm sure you folks know that the Emory, the Clifton Carter Transportation Study initiated by Emory was in desperation. They cannot get around that complex at Emory and CDC and the VA Medical Center today.
Okay. Representative Hannard has a question.
Just a quick question. This is simple, but what number one, what's the price? Would the price be of a ticket to go from Athens, Augusta, or wherever to Atlanta, and what's the time of the trip?
The trip takes about 40 minutes. One leaves, projected to leave Athens at 5:40, and it's a stop in Bogart at 6:32, at Winder at 6:44, Cedars Road at 7:04, to Lawrenceville at 7:13, Ronald Reagan Parkway at 7:20, Lilburn at 7:26, Tucker at 7:34, Emory at 7:47, Atlantic Station at 7:57, and the multimodal passenger terminal facility at 8:05. Fast as the cars, and faster, and much more confident of arriving at the time you plan. The congestion penalty now means we can't leave anywhere in that corridor and believe we can arrive at a fixed time. We have to add an hour to it. For instance, I left at a little before 11 to be sure I could be here by 1 o'clock to testify before your committee. Cost, the single trip from Athens to downtown Atlanta, $10.40. Monthly fee, $8.30. From Lawrenceville in, for instance, $6.30 to $5.40. From Emory into downtown, $3.10 or $2.50 for the monthly rate. Far less than it costs to travel by car.
Okay, other questions? Representative Roberts?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner,
And I apologize for being late. You might address this, and I see in here where a cost of $5.3 million per mile. Is that just the construction of the track, or does that include the acquisition of the land and all as well?
It includes all the costs associated with it.
Okay.
The department's done a great job of that study, and we're only asking for dollars to be able to update it from the 2005 dollars to 2007.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Now, did I hear you say that this is a future of connection here in Atlanta for other railways? Would this perhaps connect to a railway going from Athens to Lovejoy?
The multimodal passenger terminal facility is downtown and is at the location of where we all started. Very close to 0 Mile Post, but very close to the MARTA 5 Points station. All the rail that radiates in and out of this city, 12 corridors, come together at that point. So yes, there's transfer to all the other future rail corridors, also to MARTA. The Greyhound station is anxious to relocate, desperate to relocate to that multimodal passenger terminal facility as quickly as it's available. The multimodal passenger terminal facility is the linchpin, and our line comes into that point.
And Mr. Chairman, are they going to be speaking on the maglev train, or is that going to be somebody else from Atlanta to Chattanooga?
We're just speaking of the ring train today.
Yes.
I don't know what they'll call that train.
That'd be the water train. Water from Tennessee River down here to Atlanta for a train from Atlanta to Chattanooga.
Innovation Transfer.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from anybody? Any other further comments you have?
I just want to thank you for the privilege of coming.
Thank you for being here. Good to see you again, Emory.
Thank you all. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Let's get it on track.
We need a good model, that's for sure.
This is the perfect one.
I don't disagree. Okay, Greta, you went first last time. Do you want to go first this time too?
Mr. Chairman, whatever your pleasure. I'd be happy to come now.
Okay. And I was going to ask John, is John Keys with you?
Yes, sir.
I thought, John, I thought you were going to bring Cheryl King with you. Did she come?
She's not here. I can give her a call, see if she can get over here.
Well, that's all right. Okay. I thought she was going to be here to address the committee, but that's okay. What have I got here, Mr.
Well,
Spencer?
you were asking me about the bus out of Canton, if I'd ever been on a bus, so I just brought you a picture of me riding that bus, and I autographed it for you because I knew that you'd want to frame that and put it in a prominent place in your office.
Which one is you in here?
So I'm the fat one.
Who is that you're talking to? Cherokee
That
County
is the
Commission?
Cherokee County Commission.
So that's the
Chairman.
new line in Cherokee County
Yes,
you
sir.
just started? Good.
Yes, sir. Started Monday.
So you wrote it to
Yes, sir.
where?
I came in and got off right there at Peachtree Center.
Did
right
you
there
really?
by the office.
How long did it take you?
Oh, we left at 5:45, and I got there about 6:45.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was.
They have music on these buses,
You have to bring your own.
do you?
Yeah, you have to bring your own seat. But we do have a strip that goes along the baseboard on the side so that you can plug in a computer or
Really?
anything like that, so you can work and you go. And
So you can be wireless on the bus and all that?
not yet, but we have had some folks come in and make us proposals, but we just didn't want to spend the money yet. We're waiting on them to offer it for free, and we think one of
Interesting.
these days they will.
That's nice. I appreciate you doing that. Good to see you again.
I'm
So
glad to be here.
I know you don't have anything in the 07, but we didn't want to leave you out and making comments, anything you wanted to say to the committee. And
Well, y'all asked a lot of good questions the other day, and I think we pretty much covered it. But if you have other
I didn't know
questions,
if
I'll be happy
Representative
to.
Lucas had any, or Representative Roberts. Anybody have any questions for Greta? So
No, we could kept it going down and making with it, just wouldn't work.
Well, we've got it down to McDonald now, and we're getting some folks that are riding up from Bibb County that that are catching it and doing part of their ride with us, and all I realize that.
After Cherokee, where do you go next? Do you where's the next?
I guess the next route that we'll open will be out at Panola Road. That will come around. GDOT's building us a nice parking ride lot out there, and if you have the opportunity to stop by and look at it, it's coming along real well. We hope to have that up in April. Panola Road, and it'll go around to Perimeter. So this is going to be one of the first suburb to suburb that we've tried. We did one that started out of Douglas County and went to Cumberland Mall. We never could generate more than about 10 riders a day, so we pulled the plug on that after about 90 days. And but this will be the first one. That wall around through there, if you look at the traffic, that's one of the most congested in the state, and so we think that that's going to be a real good route for us. We've got a couple in Fulton County out of South Fulton we're looking at, and one that possibly will go across from Roswell through the edge of Gwinnett County and back in and tie into the MARTA station over there. We have gone to MARTA and made them a proposal for them to possibly operate that for us, and we're waiting on them to see whether all of our operations are privatized. McDonald Transit is our main operator for most of our routes. Cobb Transit runs 10 routes or 10 buses, and Cobb runs 10 buses for us out of their routes.
Now, are you in Forsyth County as well?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We start at right now. We're right across the street from the fairgrounds. We're renting space from the city, but GDOT has a parking ride lot under construction right there at Georgia 20 and 400, which we think will really improve our ridership, because the folks on the east side of 400, it'll be very convenient for them. Right now, it's not very convenient for them. But the biggest problem that we've got is locating parking ride lots. When we got into this, we were a little surprised that was going to be our problem, but parking ride lots are a problem. GDOT's been great to work with and helping us fund and construct these, but we've been hit with the same problem that they have. Asphalt costs, concrete costs, things like that drove up the price considerably more than we had estimated when we first started. And we try when we can to use private parking lots. We've got a couple of theaters that we lease space from that's working out real well. We are working with Walmart, or the people that own the old Walmart in Woodstock, and hopefully we'll have that worked out shortly, which is a more economical way to do it in the short run. In the long run, owning your own is better, but you got to maintain them and you got to do all that stuff. But
I know people complain. What do they complain about? I know you don't get all praising Progretta. What are the negatives?
Most of the complaints that we get are people talking too loud on their cell phone, because people like to, as Commissioner Shackelford said, a lot of them like to sleep, especially if they're catching that 5:30 bus in the morning, talking too loud on the cell phones. We have had some problems with some of our handicapped riders, getting them boarded, and whether you board them, you have to get the bus driver off to help them load. And we had some instances where we were waiting until everybody else loaded, and then the driver got off to help. Well, the handicapped person complained because they were sitting in the rain or whatever, waiting on everybody else. So we've got them off and putting the people on first. Well, that's making the other folks, what do you...
So you have lifts on them to lift them.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah, but that's who you going to help. Somebody's going to be standing in the rain, and
oh yeah, sure.
They're unhappy about that. But I don't know what you can do to make everybody happy.
Representative Houston and myself and Representative Hannah, we've got some land down in South Georgia. If y'all want to come down there, we can get you a situation. And Representative Lucas
you'll
be
first
glad
have to expand the Greta jurisdiction, because right now we're only the 13 metropolitan counties. So
we could do that.
I can't help you out until you do that.
You'll see your picture in the paper.
But
Okay.
How do you pay?
Per-
You do your contracts, how do you pay, Steve?
Our operation was set up. Y'all appropriated money for bonds, and the local counties, for every dollar they put up for operations, the state gave them $10 for their arterial road program. So we got about $21.5 million from the local governments to operate these on. By wisely investing the money, and because all the service didn't come online at one time, we've been able to stretch it. We were going to run for 3 years using the CMAQ money that the feds give you, and that's an 80-20 match. But we're going to be able to run through about 2010 now or 2011 with the monies that we've got from the counties and invest in that wisely.
So what do you figure it costs you to run a bond?
Oh, John, you know that number. We're
$75 a week per hour for revenue mile.
yeah. I don't know what it is per mile, but we can get it for you.
So you basically saying you put in round figure $75 an hour.
Right.
What is the furthest distance that one has to travel?
Probably the route out of Canton. That's about 40 miles.
About 40 miles. How long will it take you to run now?
A little better, because we stop in Woodstock. We start in Canton, pick up some passengers there, and then we have about 10 stops downtown. So to the end.
What do you figure your average passenger load has to be in order just to break even?
Well, there's no break even. You don't
And
break even with.
That was the problem with the bus running from me.
Right. There is, as Mr. Marksberger said a while ago, there's not a transit system in America that breaks even. You're doing good if you can recover 35, 40 cents on the dollar.
Any other questions from anybody?
Thank you for being here. You've been here twice, and thanks for the autograph.
You're welcome. Anything else I can do for you, let me know.
We'll see.
No, we let the governor drive one. He had a CDL, and he drove it when we first kicked it off, but I don't have a CDL, and I just...
You ever got the CDL with the passenger endorsement?
Sir?
You have to have passenger endorsement. You got a little P down at the bottom of it, stand for passenger endorsement.
Well, I don't know. I didn't check his out that well. Next time you see him, ask him.
You ever ride the bus?
Sir?
You ever ride the bus?
Oh, yeah, I rode it in. I wrote it in Monday.
Here's a picture of it.
Yeah. So he wanted proof, and so I brought him the picture. In fact, it's pretty cheap for me to do that. I mean, it's $5 round trip every day, and I can't drive down here and back in my vehicle for $5. I can guarantee you that. So,
Good job.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, DOT.
Good to have you here, Commissioner.
Well, it's good to be here. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Yeah, I understand y'all were here. Y'all had Buddy in front of you last week. I apologize. I was in Washington when y'all had your meeting here, and you had some issues that was brought up, and I think we have provided you with some information on those, and we'll try to answer any questions you have from that or any other questions that you may have on your minds.
Anybody have any questions for the Commissioner? Commissioner, I hadn't had a chance. There's a lot of information. It would be helpful to us, I think, if you just kind of highlight everything,
Okay.
if you would. And I know your staff's here, and if you don't know the answers, they may know the answers. So,
Well, if you'd like to go through them one by one, because we've got them in the book, and there were some that were, I guess, more major than others. But the first one I think you had asked was on the self-insurance program.
yes, sir.
Who covers the overage or the what is over the self-insurance?
Excess, yeah.
And that we've gotten with DOAS on that, and company AIG is the one who covers the excess insurance. That's the excess insurance carrier for workman's compensation, and we'll be glad to I don't know what your concerns with that was.
Well, my concern was, of course, being in the business for 30 years. I guess my question is, when you're in a self-insured fund, you have Pacific and what they call aggregate insurance, and my question is, and I didn't know what was in the law as far as state agencies, and I know occasionally we lose some good employees on construction or safety issues, and I didn't know if the department was responsible for the first $5 million or the $2.5 million. How does that work with DOAS? Do we have to fund that with state funds when an employee gets killed, or do you? I know your attorney probably knows that, but
she does, and our legal folk, our budget folks might. Angie, do you know that?
Does DOAS pick it up, or does it charge back to the department?
What we've been told by DOAS is that the DOAS will cover.
Will you come to the mic where we can see you on the internet, please? Commissioner, you may need to move over a little bit where they can see her.
We'll do that.
Okay. What we've been told by DOAS is they cover the first $1 million per claim. After that, AGI picks up the next anything over the $1 million, and the aggregate is up to $25 million per claim. And we do have revised sheets that actually give you a breakdown of this information. Vincent, can you spread those out to the committee? But DOAS will cover anything above the $25 million aggregate.
Okay, on a catastrophic, but none of it's charged back other than the premium back to the department. Is that correct?
Now, that part I'm not sure of.
Okay. I didn't know how it was. I know every agency has to pay workers' comp premium, but I knew we were self-insured, but I didn't know how the law was structured, what was charged back, because DOT probably has more, unfortunately, fatalities, I would think, than any other agency, other than maybe GBI or State Patrol, but on safety issues. So, and I guess my question is, do we have to fund? I know we do. We usually pass compensation resolutions when someone loses their life, and there's a life insurance benefit we pay back to an employee in addition to workers' comp. But I guess the question is, do y'all get charged back other than the premiums each year?
That I'm not sure of, but we can check with DOAS to see how
It'd
it's
be nice to get
structured for the
something in
department.
writing just to know, because I don't know and I've never asked that question. But
Sure.
But you say the first $1 million is reinsured. DOAS picks up the first $1 million.
Yes, anything above that AGI covers.
Okay. AIG.
Thank you.
Okay.
AIG covers.
Okay. So the most in a catastrophic loss is $5 million.
No, it's $25 million. If you look at the
25 million.
updated information we gave you, it's $25 million. Yes.
What updated? Did y'all hand us out something else? Oh, okay. I missed that. I didn't have you. You got to hand that wrong. Oh, I got you. Excuse me. I got you.
Let me ask a question.
Shrunner.
Do you know whether or not, based on claims, does DOS charge the Department of Transportation anything as far as out of your budget, like premium for that employee or anything?
Yes, we do pay a premium. It's budgeted annually in our personal services budget. For FY07, I think the total amount budgeted is $725,000. And then for 08, it actually increased greatly to about $4.2 million for workers' compensation.
That's based on claims information, I would assume.
Yes.
Let me ask you another question then. Does the Department of Transportation, if it's one of their employees, does the department know the full amount of claim paid to the individual? Or is that kept private now?
That I'm not sure of.
And the rationale is, Mr. Chairman, is whether whether or not they get an off, because what usually happens when notified on a claim, there's an in-office memo that goes on. And when they do that in-office memo, I call an actuary, decides what they're going to pay out, and they set that money aside. So if they set aside $500,000 on a claim, they only pay $125,000.
By law, they have to do that.
Well, I want to make sure, because we don't know whether or not they're turning that in against the claim when they're paying the premiums to the state on insurance.
Okay, other questions? Or I'll tell you what, Commissioner, if you'll just go ahead and go through the highlights.
Okay. And I think you've got them in the book that we provided you earlier this week. Under tab 2 in this book, there was the question was a list of roads that were in our supplemental budget. The governor had recommended putting $53 million into our own system account, and you were asking for a list of some of our state routes that we were going to cover with that $53 million. And tab 2 has got each of those listed out there, and it does total up to $53.5 million as we see the money at today. And there's a listing of some 37 state routes around the state that we are anticipating to do with that $53 million. And I believe we also provided you, last time there was a chart. Let me see if I can show you so you'll know what we're talking about there. Basically, it was showing you the condition or what we had spent on our state routes in the past several years. It was a chart like this. It was in your information at the last meeting. It did show that for years we had been attempting to spend about 10% or resurface about 10% of our system. Since 2000, we have started, because the state fund owned system account was at zero. We were able to use a little bit of our federal dollars on it, and it was coming down from the 10 and 12% area down to 8%, and then it stayed between 01 and 06 in the 5 to 6% range is all we were able to do. Each year putting us somewhere between 4 and 5% behind on our system, and then it just accumulated as it went on. This year on this same chart you showed, we gave you last week, you can see that this year in 07 we were able to do 2.8% of our system, and we're out of the funds to go toward that. We have no more money for that. So accumulated from 2001, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of around 30% behind on our system that needs to be resurfaced today. We also showed you at that time the what percent of our system, and I went over this also in the Appropriations Committee meeting, the chart that shows the percent of our system that is in the excellent to good range right now is about 63%, leaving 37% in the fair, poor to bad range. And if we continue on the rate that we're going, we've been headed down for the last few years. By 2013, we will have 16% of our system in the good to excellent percent range, and that is the reason the governor, when he was recognizing the fact that we had the funds in there, he wanted to put it into the own system account, and we would certainly encourage you to look favorably on that. The need is certainly there, as shown in the other chart. If there are any questions on that particular issue, I'll be try to answer those or go to the next one. Okay. All right. The next tab is tab 3 and 4, and Representative Graves, I think, brought this up, and that was in our last year's budget, we had let to construction $2.25 billion. That was double what we did the year before. You were asking for a list, I believe, of the roads or the projects that we did. And tab 3 and tab 4 do show that. The projects under tab 3 are projects that was let in fiscal 06, and then along with that was which projects are now put out, that we were unable to do because we just didn't have enough money to do the projects that were ready, and that is what is under tab 4, and there's a listing there, and there's quite a few projects there. We can go through them, or you can just look at them at your leisure, but tab 3 shows the projects we put under construction. Tab 4 are the ones that were delayed for some reason, and the reason for the delay is listed there also. Some of them are the design. We just ran into some delays on it, had to change the design. Some of them we just weren't able to acquire the right-of-way in time to get them authorized. Some of it, the right-of-way might have been acquired by local governments. A lot of the projects we have that. So there are factors involved in why there were delays, and this will list those, and I'd be glad to go over any of them if you have a particular one you want to talk about, or just let you look at it at your leisure.
Commissioner, I do have some questions on signals. I know up in my area, signals, usually the city or county has to participate or pay for the equipment. I notice in Cobb County, you've got a lot you want to upgrade, update, whatever. Is it normally the departments, once the city or county's paid for it, the state takes over it, and if it need to be modified or changed to better themselves, does the department pay 100% of that?
You're looking at, there's several ways to look at that. The projects that you're looking at right here are part of the governor's Fast Forward program, where we were putting in several $1 million in our signals to synchronize the signals in the metro Atlanta area. Part of that money was going in to upgrade the equipment, the existing equipment, and part of it was going in to look at the timing to make sure that everything was synchronized and they all talked to each other. You're talking about when you get out of the metro Atlanta area, you're starting to look at the signals that are either on our state route system or local governments or local road systems. If they're on a state route system, we have been able to work with our means. We've got we purchase signal heads and some signal components in bulk, and we do provide those, like you were saying. We provide those to local governments when we have those that are going on the local road. On the state route system. Generally, the local government will install those, and they'll pay for that, and we provide the major components. After the installation has taken place, local governments generally will cover the energy on that, but the taking care of the signals, if we can get an agreement with the local government where they have got technicians that they can monitor those signals and make sure the timing is correct and anything that goes wrong, we would like to get an agreement with them to do so. Now, it's not necessary because a lot of it we do have responsibility for some of it, but in your major urbanized areas, Gainesville, for instance, may have a signal group, and we just contract with them to do it themselves.
Gotcha.
Some of them we do have to handle. We just don't have the forces to handle all of the signals around the state, so we like to work up these agreements if we can.
Okay. So are we paying cash for the signals, or are we bonding the signals?
We are paying cash for these signals.
Okay. All right.
All right. Tab 5, you were asking about that. Tab 5 through 12, as a matter of fact, in your book. Yes, sir.
I've got a few questions
Okay.
here.
I'm sorry.
Representative Graves.
Commissioner, I want to thank you for the time I know your staff put into putting this information together. And if it's not too much to ask, could we get a little more information with this? And something that would help us maybe is like on tab 3, knowing what the original funding fiscal year was of those projects, that even though they were let in 2006, that might not have been the original year in which the money was allocated for that year. I think it would also help to know the amount of each item on here, and also maybe the projected completion date or the time of construction. What is estimated for there. And we had a lot of conversation a couple of years ago about congressional balancing, and I've certainly had a lot of members come to me and say, well, what's happened with that? What are we within that balance, or are we not? And I remember through that there was a division between what was state funds and federal funds or other funds, and it was all by congressional district. It was split up in several different ways, and I don't know if there's a way to somewhat summarize this and how that fits into that balance to maybe head off some questions that may come up later on. And then it may help if this information is easy to gather, is just to sort of show what is for fiscal 07 too, what's planned and projected.
Okay.
Wise. I assume these are STIP. Are these the?
Well, the STIP, the projects are in the STIP. in an urbanized area where there's an MPO, their program is called a TIP. That is rolled into the state plan, though, and that's the STIP. We can get all the information. Certainly we can get the information on what these projects were let at, the construction cost, and the scheduled completion date. We can get that real easy. As far as the year that it was authorized, of course, the money is not set up until, it's not authorized until we get ready to let it. Now, sometimes we will have money set up, though, or authorized in maybe June of 05, and the project is not let until August of 05, which throws it into another fiscal year. So, but we'll get all of that. The thing that I would really hope that I could ask you not to ask for, if I could ask for anything, is the projects in tab 4 that are not let. I don't want to give you the money for that, and I'm going to tell you why. Because these are projects that are getting ready to be let, and if I put dollars out, then contractors know how to bid. I'm putting our estimates out there, and I don't really like doing that right before a project is let, and that's the only reason. Anything that is scheduled to be let up in the next, say, 6 months, contractors will know what to bid on, and they base their bid on that. And we like to keep our construction estimates close to the vest. You've gone through that right yourself within your activities as legislators, where some people have asked for cost and everything. You said no, we don't do that. That's been in front of you folks for the last couple of years. But that's just construction estimates. If I could beg off on that part, I'll give you anything else. But we've got that, and I'll be glad individually to show you what it is. I just don't want to put it out there for somebody else. A contractor might be able to use it.
Somewhat put that out there by saying there was a shortfall of projects coming up and we need to cut certain projects, and here's what they are and what the amounts are?
The projects that were cut are out 6 years further out, though. That $7.7 billion that is cut, that's 6 years out. And I don't mind telling you what a project is 6 years out. But on one that is fixing to be let up very soon, that's the ones that we try to guard.
So they were never listed in a STIP with an amount?
No, they were. They were listed in the STIP, and the $7.7 billion that we're talking about that everybody has heard of.
I'm sorry, I meant the tab 4. Is that
the tab 4?
Is that not?
Oh, the tab 4 is in the STIP now, and they are in that program with dollars assigned to them. They are not put out in long range.
Right. So, is it? I guess you didn't protect the numbers then. Is there a reason?
No, we have protected the numbers. We just have a big number, but not an individual number. So it's just like 7.7. That's on 500 projects. We never did put out what those 500 projects are individually. Just the accumulation of it, the summation is 7.7 billion. Same thing on this. Now I can tell you how much is in this total right here. We can add that up, and let's just say it's $1 billion. I can tell you it's $1 billion, but to tell you that each individual one is 100,250 or something like that, that's what I'd really rather not put out, because that is a construction estimate that is also guarded by law. So that's what we try not to put out on the street.
So the ones on tab 4 are somewhat, they were included in the fiscal year 2006 budget, but never weren't prepared, weren't ready when the year ended, so they carried forward.
That is correct.
So the money was set aside for them.
The money was never authorized. We had it in the STIP. We had it in there and said, this is what we want to do. Schedule says this should fall in this year, so we asked for it. So what would happen is, if that project is not ready, if it doesn't get ready in that time period, it rolls to the next year. We've got other projects that can be moved in. If as long as it's in the 3-year STIP, we can move it and move the funds in there and use it a year early, because it's in that funding cycle where the money is already defined. If it's outside there, I can't do that. But if it's in the year one year up, I can move those in and get those, because I've got money that I didn't use, and I move that project over here. I just swapping projects is all it's doing.
I guess what confuses me, in the last meeting, similar questions were asked, and Buddy said there were $1.6 billion allocated for road projects, and $2.25 billion is what was spent. and some of that 2.25, that variance there was a carryover from previous years, is I guess the way I took that, as projects that were allocated in a previous year that weren't quite ready, but the money was set aside and it.
The money was authorized. We sent authorization request over to Federal Highway before the end of the fiscal year, but the project was not let until that fiscal year. The 2.25 is projects that we put on the street in that year. But some of the money was authorized. It could have been authorized in the year previous to that, and we did not get it under contract.
So what happens to that money? I guess this is a question. Is it just sort of set aside, even though it's not, it is authorized, but it's not let? And I'm having a hard time understanding what the difference is if you carry it forward.
Okay, if it's authorized but not let, then we have the authorization to let the project. It's in the bank. We have the authorization, or the paper is sitting there. We don't have actual money. The paper is sitting there with the authorization that says, when you do get it ready, we will provide the federal dollars to cover the project. That's what that is. But we have to send authorization requests over and get their permission to spend that money.
So in a sense, there was $600 million in the bank, possibly, that was sort of carried over for a year or two until the project was.
In a sense, yes, or at least $600 million in authorization approvals.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one more question, just a different subject matter.
Well, and don't let me forget the congressional balancing also that you asked.
Right. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. On hearing about the shortfall of projects and the amount of dollars, there's been a little bit of discussion about the data that was used possibly to estimate those projects was outdated. Has that data been updated in such a way that when projects are estimated today that they're using current construction data?
Yeah, that's where we really came up with the bigger, when we came up and said we're $7.7 billion overbooked. We've got more projects in here than we've got money to cover. Is we went through a process to update our cost. And the reason we were doing that is because in that time period, the several months prior to that, the 12 months prior to that, we were going through a time period where right-of-way costs were escalating real fast, construction costs were escalating real fast, and even the project scope was changing some. So we knew that we had old data in our files, and we needed to get it updated as quick as possible. It's just that the costs were escalating, and we just couldn't get to all of our projects because we've got so many thousand projects in the program that we're working on. We got it all updated and says, we have a problem. We cannot cover all of these projects. We're required to balance our program. It's just the data that we were using was out of date because the costs were going up so fast. So that's the reason we went ahead and said, okay, now in our update, when we got all of our numbers pulled together, we says we're $7.7 billion too deep. We cannot cover it.
So in a sense, the estimates were $7.7 billion off.
They were, and it's just because they were not updated estimates. Now we have done several things.
So is that considered a funding shortfall? I guess
Well, it's a funding shortfall if you've got a project in there and you're expected to pay X amount, and now all of a sudden the cost is X plus 10 or whatever. Then that 10 is a shortfall. Yes. I mean, we call it a shortfall, but the problem is we just don't have the money in the budget to cover all the projected dollars to come in, and that's what it is. It's projected dollars on the federal and the state side.
When was the last time you updated the construction data? How often?
Well, we're continuously updating our data. It's just that all of those cost increases hit us almost all at once. And as we're working on projects and as we are bringing more projects into the program, we're also trying to update the ones that we're working on to continue to get updated prices. But it's a continuous operation. It's just everything hit us all at once. That's what happened there.
Thank you again for the detail you provided.
Well, we'll get the other. But you asked about the congressional balancing. Congressional balancing has been a bugbear. I'm just going to tell you. When we got into it with the first law, we didn't get too far into it that the law was changed. We got in a little further and we changed congressional district boundaries. So we have really, to this date, we have not seen a 5-year window that the law says you need to balance in. We've not even gotten there, because every time we get a year or two into it, it changes, either the boundaries or something changes on it, or the law changes. I think the way the law is now is probably as good as you could get it. If you're going to have a balancing act, a balancing of congressional districts, it's probably as good as you can get it, that still allows you and us the latitude to come in and talk about projects of need, because you do have it in there. You've got that the balancing now is 80% of the money, and that's both federal and state. It's they're all added together. So, and then you've got that 20% variance that you allow for projects of need. You start doing a project like, take the one up there below Representative Rogers' area, the State Route 316 I-85 interchange. That one project would have eaten up 1.5 times that congressional district's money for one whole year. But that 20% variance that you allowed us to have allows us to do a project of need like that. Now, we try to keep it as balanced. Our program and the program that we've got now, we balance it, number one, by dollar figures that we expect to get in. We know what we're going to get in on the federal side, what we expect. We hope it stays true. And we got a good estimate on the state side. But then we turn around and balance it out by congressional districts. And projects shift in and out, projects move around. But we try to make sure that congressional district, if something comes in, something in that district goes out to keep it balanced.
Thank you. I know it's a tough process.
Well, it took us quite a while to get to just where we were.
Another question here.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Hey, Mr. Commissioner. I was going to move on to tab 5 with the facilities.
Be glad to.
And in the facilities,
You want him to do a briefing on it? Then you just...
well, yes, sir. You're heading that way.
Yeah, I was headed that way, and I'll be very brief to get to your question, though.
Sure.
I guess I need to tell you why we have these in here in the first place. In 2004, I believe it was, this state filled out a survey or took part in a survey where we were rated efficiency-wise with other states. And we got a C in infrastructure. Now, that was not really our state route system. That was our state-owned buildings. That's the only C that this state got. We got a B or an A. We got an A in people. We got B in a couple of other things, and I've got the report here. But we got a C in infrastructure. And the biggest gig that we got in there was deferred maintenance on our buildings. And so the governor's office, the Commission for New Georgia, set out and says, okay, we want to do something about that. We're going to participate in that survey again. Gina Abrams over at Building Authority, myself, we sat down on the infrastructure side and went through that survey and tried to correct, okay, where are our problem areas? This is one of our problem areas. We've got facilities all over the state, maintenance facilities, area engineer offices, district offices. We've got them all over that are, some of them are over 50 years of age, and they are inadequate not only for the equipment that we're working on and using today and all the various pieces, different, they're just all kinds, but also just what we're using, the technology we're using today. We've got buildings that were not set up years ago to have the wiring system for computers, and the heating and air conditioning is bad. There's one in here, and we got pictures where we still have a bathroom outside. You have to go outside to get to it. So they're not ADA compliant, which we're required to do. So we went through this with Building Authority. We established a facilities manager to go through this, and we have looked at them, and with that we have a ranking system, and that ranking system tells us the condition of the facilities. The governor saw fit to put it in the budget. He put an amount in there, I think it was a little over $5 million, somewhere in that neighborhood, to address I won't say they're the only ones in need, but they are certainly 8 of them, I believe, that really need to be addressed. They are mostly, they're maintenance facilities and a couple of area engineer offices that, one of the area offices was an old patrol barracks, one down in LaGrange, that the State Patrol abandoned years ago, and then we got it. So, it's a hand-me-down facility. But the others are just old facilities. But I'll be glad to go through. I think y'all had asked for some snapshots, some photos of them, and I believe we have put that in here. But the bottom line is, we're trying to get in compliance with that what that survey showed that we were very delinquent in, but we're also trying to address our needs because these are old structures.
Further questions? Commissioner, who did the survey you're talking about? Is that just an third-party source that grades
It's
it?
let's see, it is the Governing Magazine, I believe is what it's called.
Governing Magazine?
Yeah.
It's Council of State Governments.
Council. Okay.
Yeah. It shows us that Georgia got an overall B rating. We got a B minus in money, an A in people, a C or C plus in infrastructure, and a B minus in information. Those 4 categories. And the Commission for a New Georgia is looking now. We're going back through this survey, and we have put a lot into trying to get this thing updated. And that was the worst thing. That was where we got gigged, and it was on infrastructure. It was on the deferred maintenance side, is what it was.
Yes, on the facilities themselves, each one, the routine maintenance buildings are allocated $500,000. A couple of area offices, $750,000 and $650,000, and then the Special Forces building, $1.2 million. And looking on page 11, I just did, of course, were all the pages for the routine maintenance buildings, and then on page 11 for the Special Forces building, was doing an estimation as far as cost, and we're looking at $140 to $165 per square foot. And most of these, as far as a standard design, look like, the most economical way to go about it was the 10 buildings, which are good ways to go. But it says standardized designs reduce cost of design, and obviously accelerates construction, which is good. $164 or $140 per square foot, is that? Is that? Well, we already have the contracts for these, in stone, or is that some kind of standard real estate market value that we've seen already, or we've researched that to know that $75 or $80 per square foot is not better for these type of facilities?
Well, we have gone through, we've got a consultant to do the design of all of our structures or all of our buildings here. And because we have so many of them, we didn't want to get somebody on board, an architect, to design each and every one individually. So we went to a standardized just to meet our needs, an area engineer office of certain size. If we had a bigger area engineer needs, such as down in Macon, it's more of a central location where we have large meetings. It's certainly different than our other area engineer office. Maintenance facilities are the same way. Special Forces has a lot of specialized equipment. It's a larger structure. Now, as far as cost on it, I'm not an architect or a builder. I don't know what it cost. I do know I'm just fixing to do a room addition on my house, and they quoted me about $165 to $200 a foot, and I went berserk. So I understand what you're saying, because I thought it'd be around $45 to $50.
Right.
So,
but we're
shows
not
the world I'm in.
We're not looking to put the nice crown molding and the and the pretty fixtures like what you're going to have in your house in these facilities.
Yeah.
The reason I brought it up is I was just thinking, we've got a couple of facilities, the one in Ringgold and Dalton, and I've been by there, and they look like these pictures also. Just sheds, or actually, looks like a couple of us put up some 2x4s and nailed some tin on the top to park these things. And I understand the need, but the monies per facility, if we could spread that a little better, is my only question.
Yeah. Well, we have put them out for bid. Some of these we've already constructed over the past several years, because we've been using these standard designs for a few years now, and the bid is coming in right at where they are. So to tell you if it's too high or too low, it's what the architect was saying it should be. They're energy efficient buildings. We do have some storage space overhead where we put shelves and everything up there to store things. We've got office space in there. It is, like I said, energy efficient. All I can tell you is that the going price on it is there, and I've looked at these myself. I don't think they're quite elaborate. They are somewhat of a tin-type building. They are insulated, but they are a tin structure. And some of these, like you're talking about, somebody nail them up. One of these in here was moved from another location and nailed up. So,
and you mentioned the abandoned Georgia State Patrol office. I believe there's one in Calhoun you could probably move into also that Georgia State Patrol just moved out of.
Yeah.
It's right there. Isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, Lover's Lane. I think
That could be a good spot for something. Little renovation there. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Sure thing.
Go ahead, Mr. Lineco.
Looking further through, I believe there was some questions on the brain train, where we were with that, and you just heard a presentation on that. I'll be glad to talk if I don't know that I could add anything else to it. The study that is ongoing, though, is scheduled to be completed by the end of this calendar year. I'm not sure I can add any more to that other than what you've already heard in the previous presentation.
Let me ask a question on
Okay.
that, Mr. Commissioner. You know, I've been here 13 years, and that's all I've heard for 13 years. And when you're with the department, don't you think we're at a point where we need to go ahead and do something? I know it takes dollars away from y'all, but, you know, we beat this horse to death. And don't you think it would be a good model to go ahead and do the brain train, which makes sense? I'm glad they named it the brain train.
The line, Mr. Chairman, the line to Athens rated out number one in the studies that went on through the decade of the 90s up to now. The only reason we were looking at the line to Macon is because we had not finished all of the preliminary activities, the studies and everything, all the studies on the line to Athens. We had completed them there. Yes, to answer your question, it's no different than this morning. It's no different than last week. I think y'all met last week. I was in Washington, and when I came in from Washington, everybody says the city was bogged down on Thursday morning. We've got to do something. Now, to tell you, you know, there are some tough decisions that's got to be made. We've got immediate needs today that we could spend our money on today. But we already know that the projections with the growth that this state is experiencing in a few years, we're not going to be able to build and build and build. We've got to provide some kind of a transportation system to get people off of the roads. Now, if we had the train today, would it be self-sustaining? No, we've already heard that. Right. 10 years from now, would it be? It probably would be better, closer than that, but it probably won't be totally. I don't know any of them that are. But at least there's a system out there that you can depend. You can have a time frame that you could depend on, and you're not stuck in traffic on a road.
So you're in favor of using this as a model in the department and
yes.
DOT commissioners, or you're the commissioner, but the members would be in support of, more than likely.
Well, I couldn't speak for our board. Because, you know, but I will speak for me. We've got to have something out there for the citizens of this state for today, especially for the future. If we wait till the future gets here, then we're going to be in the future plus.
But you have a little influence with your board members, I'm sure, though, don't you?
Well, I would like to. I try.
Okay. All right, next tab.
Okay,
right,
well, the last thing on here, and it was a question that came up. Was there a question?
Yeah, Representative Lucas.
As you talk about the
David, speak in the microphone where I can hear you, please.
You can't hear me?
No,
Commissioner, can you hear me now?
a little bit louder.
Can you hear me now? Commissioner, what I want to find out, you talked about the brain train, but what about the study that was done between Atlanta and Lovejoy? What would that ridership do? That's not ready.
Okay. There was never one of the corridors looked at to go to Lovejoy. I'll lay that out. It went to Macon.
Yeah.
Lovejoy just happened to be the spot along the Macon line where we ran out of money. We could get it to Lovejoy, and the studies that were completed showed that half the ridership that was on the Macon line would be picked up from Lovejoy north. That's what it said. If we got to Griffin, we would pick up about 70 or 75%, somewhere in that neighborhood. But then we would get the rest of it from Macon up. But that's what that study was showing.
So we've got everything worked out with CSX Railroad. If the leases that they, they do lease property from the state to run those.
Well, there is a line that Norfolk Southern is willing to work with us on, so we can put the trains on that line. Norfolk Southern has got to work out one puzzle piece. Their part of the thing is it feasible for Norfolk Southern? But then there's another piece of the puzzle that says we got to buy the train sets, and then the third piece is we got to have an agreement to cover the operating and maintenance cost. No, that is not Norfolk Southern, nor is the train sets Norfolk Southern. Just the agreement with Norfolk Southern to improve the line, improve crossings, things like that, to get it where the train can go at the higher speed to come through.
That's going Lovejoy.
That's going just to Lovejoy because we don't have any. We have no funds to carry it further.
What is the cost on that thing? $1 million a mile?
I don't know if I can tell you the cost per mile. I would think it'd be more than that. The whole thing going to Lovejoy, I think, was 19 miles, something in that neighborhood, and it was about $109 million. The next thing, and I believe I heard it a while ago, I believe it was Representative Forrester brought it up, and that was the maglev.
He left.
Do I need to answer it?
No.
There's a well, there's no maglev study, I'll tell you that. It's a high-speed ground transportation that has maglev as a component.
Is that him coming back? No. Okay. Okay.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that answered the questions that you had, but I'll be glad to answer anything else that.
Yeah, I want to mention something.
Okay.
Let me say your deputy commissioner did a wonderful job and his staff. So, this is the best information I've gotten since I've been here. So, they're to be complimented for the job they did. This is another subject. The construction work going on 85 in county to county, where an individual broke down night before or yesterday morning at 6 o'clock. Do hero units go down that far?
No, our hero units, and I'm going to talk in two time frames. Before Fast Forward. Right. Fast Forward started in fiscal 05. We're 2 years into it now. It covered about 147 miles of some of the arterials. It does not go all the way down there. Now, we can send our heroes out, and we do that for special events, such as when there's a race day, we will send it down Clayton County. We'll send them over to Augusta during the Masters to help control traffic over there. But the heroes are in a loop that is a predetermined loop. Now, what we're doing under Fast Forward is extending those loops, extending that coverage out to about 270 miles, all the major arteries. Now, to tell you if it goes all the way to the Noonan area or down in that area, I'd have to check and see. I do know we're almost doubling it, getting it up to 270 miles, but a lot of that's covering all of 285 because we don't have coverage on all of 285 yet. So we will be expanding it out, but that's throughout Fast Forward, which takes us into 010. That was that 6 year.
This 42-year-old man that got killed, of course, I guess he panicked and got out of his car to try to push it out of the way. Is there any enforcement or help down there? I mean, it was 6 o'clock in the morning. His brother was with him. The brother had to jump over the wall from getting hit. I mean, don't we need to do something about that?
Well, we have, when we know, first of all, we have traffic control in all of our projects.
At 6 o'clock in the morning?
Well, we have traffic control 24 hours a day. That, whether work is going on or not, traffic control is out there.
You don't have the cameras.
No, we don't have camera coverage down that far. But traffic control, we have barriers up, we have the cones up, we have the barrels up, things like this. It's just some of those areas, especially when you get out a little bit further, they're not lighted, and sometimes you depend on headlights to see the reflective tape on some of the traffic control devices, and we have had some complaints about that stretch, and our district engineer was down there looking at it just prior to this and trying to determine what we need to be doing if something's different. All the measures are there meet what you're supposed to do, but what you're supposed to do, meeting what's in a book and what you need, we can always do more than what is in there. And that's what we're trying to determine. We really don't know the reason. He did break down right near a barrier wall.
On the inside, wasn't he on the inside?
He came in off of a ramp. He came in off of a ramp, I think, or somewhere around a ramp, so it'd have to be on the inside. The picture I saw showed it on the opposite side, but there's no ramp on the inside. I think when they developed the picture, they flipped it over. So
I mean, this guy had 6 children.
Yeah. Well, his brother saw him get hit by 4 cars, I think I heard. Yeah.
I mean, that concerns me. I mean, that could be anybody in this room. It could be you. And of course, I wouldn't get out, but, you know, he should have scaled the wall himself. But what couldn't the department or the contractor, you know, have a wrecker, someone there just in cases like that to push people out of the way? I mean, it's...
We have done things like that in the past. In some of our projects, we have put wrecker service in there, and we have talked about it, and we do have some things like this. We have some issues down on South Georgia on I-75 where we're doing a lot of major work, and we're choking everything down on one side, and we don't really have access, so we're going in and putting access points in there. It's just unfortunate you put an access point in, and if you break down above or below that, it doesn't help you.
Yeah.
But we're doing things like that. And we're also we're putting the law enforcement in our contract, so the contractor pays for that, and we pay them for off-duty law enforcement. And we have put wrecker service in some of our contracts. We've stationed them in areas. But, you know, if this gentleman, for instance, if it happened and he got out, you know, where's the wrecker? It could be stationed, you know, up the road some, or even behind him, and just hadn't got there yet. It's hard to anticipate everything. All we can do is make sure that if we can pick up anything, or somebody says, "Hey, I had a problem through here this morning. Can you look at this?" Then we always go and check it to see if there's something further we can do.
I mean, I've done that myself, and I'm sure Chairman Smith's done the same thing. I carry a chain with me just for that reason. Of course, I don't like getting out and everybody zipping by me.
But we encourage folks, if they call in, we tell them to stay in their vehicle.
Well, yeah, okay. Any other questions anybody got? Anybody? It's good to see you. A good presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. 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 Representative Snow, you want to say anything?
No, I thought you were going to have a vote today, Mr. Chairman.
No, sir. No.
On the 07.
No, not today.
You know when that's going to be?
I haven't. We have to meet first and discuss it. So, you want me to let you know?
I enjoyed being here, though.
Okay. All right.